I'm Liz Berger. I'm a member of the board of the Municipal Arts Society and also president of the Alliance for Downtown New York. And I'm very happy to join you as the program addresses a complex and important subject, in fact, probably the most important subject today, and that is the economy. It's no surprise that times are tough across the nation and that here in New York City, job creation and retention is the #1 issue, both to government and business leaders. One approach has been diversification of the economy, but while New York is attracting new businesses, the question of how else to spur real growth remains. And here to address that question and discuss the City of New York's approach to economic development and job creation is Seth Pinsky. Seth was appointed president of the New York City Economic Development Corporation by Mayor Bloomberg in February 2008, and he had a 7-month honeymoon before the collapse of Lehman Brothers ushered in one of the most significant economic downturns in generations. In response, Seth has reevaluated the agency's strategy for supporting the New York City economy and also for positioning the city as an international center of innovation. So diversification, entrepreneurship, innovation. Seth has also modernized EDC's property management portfolio, overseen $2.5 billion in capital investments from basic infrastructure to exciting new parks and streetscapes like Lower Manhattan's East River Waterfront Park. And in Lower Manhattan, we've seen firsthand what Seth's approach to innovation has meant. You know, Lower Manhattan is a place where innovation and technology is a 400-year-old story, and economic diversification is the new rule. And I'd like to tell you just about one partnership that we have had with EDC that I think is really a hallmark of what Seth has brought to government, and that's the Hive at 55. We've partnered with EDC to create a co-working facility in Lower Manhattan that's about working alone together. It's a new kind of space that has all the amenities of a traditional office space, but none of the restrictions. It's the kind of incubation facility, it's the kind of place for entrepreneurs that EDC is trying to create across the city. And I think it's just one example of the kind of new thinking that Seth has brought to the agency, to the city, to Lower Manhattan, and to the rest of New York. So please join me in welcoming Seth Pinsky.
Thank you very much, Liz, and congratulations on all the great work that you've been doing downtown. Any of you who walk around the streets of Lower Manhattan and think about where we've come from in the last 10 years can appreciate just how much work Liz and the Downtown Alliance have done. I wanted to speak to you today a little bit about what we in the Bloomberg administration are doing to try to grow our economy. And I wanted to start first by citing some words that President Obama uttered in his State of the Union address in January of this past year, in which he laid out what he believed to be the secret for American success in the 21st century. In the president's words, "The first step in winning the future is encouraging American innovation. None of us can predict with certainty what the next big industry will be or where the new jobs will come from. 30 years ago, we couldn't know that something called the internet would lead to an economic revolution. What we can do, what America does better than anyone else, is spark the creativity and the imagination of our people." To be sure, the president's recipe is one with which it's hard to argue, and is one that seems to be increasingly accepted by leaders and economic development officials across the country and around the globe. And yet, if there is, in fact, a formula for success based around innovation in the 21st century, I think this begs a follow-on question for us as New Yorkers. Namely, are we as a city adequately equipped to be able to exploit that recipe? If we were to be totally honest with ourselves, I think we would probably have to admit that over a significant portion of the past 2 or 3 decades, few in New York, including even its most stalwart supporters, could answer that question in the affirmative. Sure, we were the nation's capital of finance and its capital of fashion and of media and the arts, but could we really classify our city as a great capital of innovation? Other than during a brief period of time in the late 1990s, which was followed by a dramatic crash and little discernible activity thereafter, most would agree that for the majority of the second half of the 20th century, New York's economic landscape had little that would suggest that it was or even could be a center of new technology. And yet, in the past half-decade or so, very quietly, the seeds of change have been germinating in our city. Beneath the surface, New York has been, as it is wont to do from time to time, reinventing itself once again, passing milestones that, critical as they may be, few have taken notice of. Take patent creation by way of example. In the past 7 years, the number of patents assigned to New York City inventors has increased by an average annual rate of 12% or 78% in aggregate. Meanwhile, according to an index of innovation activity in New York City developed in recent years by EDC, working with leading economists and economic thinkers, the overall level of innovation in New York City, measuring both input and output, has risen by double digits since the index's inception. And all of this is translating into real economic activity. Today, according to Inc. magazine, the New York area is home to more of the fastest growing companies in the United States than any region besides the San Francisco region. Even more impressively, in the end of 2009, New York, for the first time in its history, surpassed Massachusetts as the nation's #2 recipient of venture capital investment in technology companies. This lead has only widened since then, with $831 million in venture capital funding secured by New York-based companies in the past quarter alone, a figure that is 17% higher than the equivalent figure in Boston. But even with all of these positive portents for the future, we're still not where we want and where we need to be to secure our position at the very top of the league tables. For example, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, scientists and engineers today account for under 4% of New York's private sector workforce, versus nearly 7% in San Francisco and nearly 7.5% in Boston. Meanwhile, whereas high-tech payroll accounts for 6% of total private sector payroll in New York City, in both San Francisco and Boston, the equivalent share is more than twice this level. Put simply, while New York is doing better in the innovation economy than many might think, we still have a long way to go, which is why the Bloomberg administration is not resting on its laurels. Instead, at the mayor's personal encouragement, we are aggressively rolling out a series of initiatives, close to 100 in just the last 3 years, designed to strengthen our competitive position in the coming decades. So what are some of these initiatives? What form do they take? First, there are initiatives that are designed to help so-called legacy industries in which New York has traditionally had a leadership role, industries like fashion and media and financial services. With these industries, we're working to help them transition from 20th century business models to 21st century business models. A good example of our efforts on behalf of this sector is the Media Lab that we launched with Columbia and NYU Poly in 2010, the first municipally sponsored media lab in the nation. This institution, which already has 200 corporate and academic partners, is designed both to help establish businesses in the media industry to see around the corner and anticipate changes in technology before they arrive, while also being designed to connect these businesses to the cutting-edge work that's taking place in academic laboratories across the 5 boroughs. The second prong of our efforts to spur innovation in New York involves work that we're doing to attract growing industries in which New York has a competitive advantage, but in which for one reason or another we've simply hit below our weight historically. So, for example, in bioscience, we're in the process of creating nearly 2 million square feet of new commercial wet lab space, which we believe will help ensure that the more than 20 bioscience companies that are spun out from our academic medical centers each year remain and grow right here in the 5 boroughs. The first efforts towards this end are today bearing fruit, both in Brooklyn, where a new facility that's being developed with SUNY Downstate Medical Center in Sunset Park is set to double its available space in the coming year, and here in Manhattan, where the Alexandria Center for Life Sciences, which has been developed in partnership with Alexandria Real Estate Equities, opened its first 300,000 square foot phase just last year and is essentially fully leased today. The final prong of our efforts to spur innovation in New York involves a focus on increasing entrepreneurship more generally, regardless of the sector. The reason this prong is agnostic as to industry grows from our belief that the best way to ensure that the next big thing happens right here in New York City is to put the tools to help determine what that next big thing is in the hands of what we believe to be our greatest resource, our smart and talented workforce. To achieve this goal, our efforts literally run the gamut, from a series of training programs that we've developed in partnership with SUNY's Levin Institute, the Kaufman Foundation, and the city's Department of Small Business Services that have attracted thousands of budding entrepreneurs in just the last couple of years, to an early stage investment fund that has leveraged $3 million in city funding with $19 million in private funding from Firstmark Capital and has already closed several transactions, to affordable real estate that's now available through a network of business incubators that in just the last 2 years has raised nearly $40 million in venture capital funding and is to have the capacity soon to welcome nearly 1,000 new businesses over the next 3 years. But even with all of these efforts, we've known for some time that there is more that we need to do if we want to make the quantum leap in innovation that we're seeking for our city. And so, back in 2008, following the collapse of Lehman Brothers, we launched a new and somewhat unorthodox initiative that we labeled our Game Changers exercise. The premise behind this exercise was deceptively simple. Find as many people as we could from a wide array of backgrounds, academics, entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, business and community leaders, and ask them a simple question. Namely, if they were given a magic wand and could use it to change one thing about New York City that they believed would have the most material positive impact on the city's economy, what would that change be? Incredibly, after discussions with over 300 individuals, we started to hear a very discernible and consistent message. Specifically, what we heard was the following. Notwithstanding the fact that we have excellent institutions of higher learning specializing in engineering and applied sciences here in New York City, given the critical role that such institutions play in the creation of innovation clusters, and given the size of our city's economy at the heart of a metropolitan region that has a gross metropolitan product that's roughly the size of the gross domestic product of India, and given the scope of our ambition, namely that we want to make New York City the capital of innovation in the 21st century, the bottom line is that these institutions are simply not producing talent or R&D at a sufficient scale. And so we decided to issue a challenge to the academic community both here in New York and outside of the city. Our challenge offered the following trade. If an institution or institutions were willing to make a significant incremental investment in an existing facility or create a brand new facility somewhere in the 5 boroughs, we would help that facility by offering technical assistance, by offering free city-owned land, and by offering seed capital in an amount of up to $100 million. After the first round of this challenge, which was launched in December, the response that we received was extremely encouraging, with 27 institutions submitting serious proposals, including 5 of the top 20 U.S. graduate engineering schools and 11 of the top 100 international engineering schools. Building off of that momentum, in July, Mayor Bloomberg himself launched the second and final round of our challenge. Our goal is to select a winner or winners from among the respondents to this final round by the end of this calendar year, with public approvals to be completed, and we hope a shovel in the ground before the mayor leaves office at the end of 2013. An ambitious goal, but one that we are determined to achieve. Looking at the competitive landscape nationally and internationally, New York faces real and significant challenges that in many ways makes our role in the future of the global economy less secure and less certain than it's been in many generations. Though on a certain level this is disquieting, as a student of history, I retain my faith in our ability as New Yorkers to rise to the challenge and succeed. The reason? Because New York has been here before. Just look back at the 19th century, a time when New York was competing with cities such as Philadelphia and Boston and Baltimore to become the dominant port on the East Coast. Notwithstanding its many natural advantages, it was anything but a foregone conclusion that New York would successfully claim this title. But New York ultimately prevailed. And one of the primary reasons, a significant investment made at the direction of Governor DeWitt Clinton in a public work that was mockingly referred to as Clinton's Ditch, but ultimately came to be known as the Erie Canal. With the completion of this project, New York quickly emerged not just as the dominant center of shipping on the East Coast, but as the nation's dominant center of business, finance, and communication, a position that we have never conceded. Well, today we face another Erie Canal moment. The future is once again up for grabs and is once again anything but a foregone conclusion that New York will emerge the victor. The good news, though, is that we have an incredibly strong hand to play. And equally importantly, we have enlightened leadership, both in the public and the private sector, that as Governor Clinton did in the 19th century, recognizes the importance of looking beyond day-to-day challenges and focusing on the long term. Given this, I remain an optimist and believe that if we continue to work together constructively, if we continue to make prudent decisions and wise investments, if we look past the quotidian and chart our course instead over years or even decades, the future of our city will not just equal any era in our city's past, but will bring us greater success, greater prosperity than any era that has come before at any time in our city's long and illustrious history. Thank you very much.